Enjoy your presentation and let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Christina. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and introduce, is everybody good? Karen, Kelsey, y'all ready? I can't hear you, Karen.
I still don't see the PowerPoint.
It's not pulled up.
Okay.
We will let her get there and get it pulled up.
Thank you, Karen.
Okay, well, while we are waiting for Karen to get up, pull up her PowerPoint presentation, I just wanted to go ahead and introduce our presenter. Are you ready for a fundraising consultant, or do you simply just need a board makeover? Kelsey Jones is the executive director at West Georgia Technical College. She is there with the foundation. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Karen, and then I'm gonna let you introduce Karen. All I know is she said you are the consultant for them. So.
Yes, Karen Douglas. She's my rock star consultant. She's been with me on this journey for almost, I think, a year, start of next year. So we wanted to, well, first and foremost, thank everyone for being with us this morning. I know it's early and it's a little bit cold here in LaGrange, Georgia this morning. So we really appreciate your time and your attention, and just hope that we provide you a really great session. But Karen and I wanted to host this presentation because in this time working together for the last year, we've really taken a deep dive into kind of self-evaluation of our foundation here at West Georgia Tech, as well as our board, and kind of learned some lessons along the way. And so I wanted to share my perspective, being relatively new to the field and definitely new to working with a consultant. And then Karen brings a wealth of knowledge. So we just wanted to kind of share that perspective with everyone, and hopefully you all find it helpful. So, okay, awesome. I see our PowerPoint. Karen, you want to move us to the next slide?
Sure. Technical difficulties here to begin with, right? Thank you, everyone, for your patience. My name's Karen Douglas. As Kelsey mentioned, we've been working together for a little while. Kelsey is the rock star in this relation, without question. I'm very fortunate to have met her and really to have been introduced to West Georgia Tech. I have been in fundraising for quite some time, for a little over 2 decades, and have spent a good bit of that time in higher education. One of the reasons why I thought it would be great for Kelsey and I to be here together is because, in addition to that fundraising experience, I just have a lot of experience working with boards and being on boards. And that has been, I think, very helpful for our relationship. Kelsey?
Absolutely. So hi again, everyone. My name is Kelsey Jones Bassett. I just added that last name about a month ago, so I'm still getting used to it. But just a little bit about myself. I've been in fundraising for, I think 2021 will be 6 years. So definitely still a lot to learn. I've been in this role at West Georgia Tech for about 2.5 years. Most of my experience and development is within the technical college system of Georgia, which we are a part of. A little bit about our institution, just to give you some framework there. We have a 7-county service delivery area. We serve about 7,000 technical education students, and then an additional about 3,000 through adult education and corporate training. Our foundation is governed by a board of trustees who I adore, and I'll talk about some more in the presentation. We have about $17 million in assets. So I'm very fortunate to have inherited a very healthy organization, and we aspire to raise somewhere around $1 million a year. And in the framework of this presentation, I'll allude a little bit to a comprehensive capital campaign that we're undertaking. So we are building a new campus from the ground up in Carroll County, Georgia. And so that is ever present in our fundraising minds. And so we are fundraising for that project as well as the entire college. So it's a complete comprehensive campaign. And maybe next slide. Awesome. So Karen and I hope this morning that we will accomplish these objectives with you all. And I'll just share with you that we do not mind being interrupted. So if you do have questions for us and you want to type them in the chat, I think Chelsea's going to help us kind of facilitate that. But our objectives for this morning are really to talk about board recruitment, what that looks like, what board development looks like, and the importance of engagement and accountability with your board, with your constituents, and really, with yourself as a staff person and those on your team. And then we really want to focus in on what a consultant can, can't, should, and shouldn't do for you. So we'll kind of walk you through the whole thought process from the very beginning, when you're really just starting to evaluate, am I ready to work with a consultant? What would that look like? And then we're going to deep dive into what the relationship actually looks like once you're in it. So next slide.
Sure. Transparency, truth-telling, and power dynamics. So one of the things Kelsey just alluded to in the last slide was sort of what a consultant can and can't and should and shouldn't do. I will tell you the most important thing when you think about a consultant relationship is if you're able to really be forthcoming with information to that consultant. If everyone on the team is going to be able to be transparent, and or if your consultant is going to be able to pull that information out of them, equally important. So one of the things that you have to be able to do is be honest with yourself as the fundraising person or as the external relations person that is on your staff, right? You're the one that's ultimately responsible. So you have to be honest, because the only way you get to where you want to get is if you're starting from truth, because that way you'll be able to build upon what actually exists and not building upon fantasies and things like that. So, and Kelsey's laughing, right? Because one of the things that I had to do was, constantly say, just tell me, right? Don't be embarrassed. Just tell me what I'm asking you. So in the realm of fundraising and resource development, what do we expect of board members and why do we expect it? So I think we all come into this thinking about, okay, I want my board members to do X, Y, and Z. Name those things that you want them to do and be very clear in your mind about what you expect of them. Because if you're not clear in your mind, it's going to be terribly difficult for you to actually explain that to them and for you to share with them what your expectation is of them. The next thing is around the board members' truth-telling, assess their own effectiveness. And how does that compare with your assessment? So get board members to be honest, and assessing yourself isn't about, as a board member, I can tell you, assessing yourself and your effectiveness isn't about whether you come to a meeting or not, okay? It's about whether you're being used, whether you as a board member are moving the mission and vision and strategy of that organization forward. And it's important that your board members assess themselves. And then likewise, it's important that you as the fundraiser and perhaps the person that you report to, that you look at what they think versus what it is that you think, okay? So what I'd like you to do is just take about 10, 15 seconds and think about and perhaps write down what your 2 or 3 challenges are in terms of fundraising, in terms of resource development, in terms of board development. What are those few challenges that you feel stand in your way that prevent you from moving forward? Okay, Kelsey?
Awesome. I just want to underscore one point that Karen just made on that slide, and that's the importance of transparency and truth telling. And I just want to say, before we approached this relationship, when we thought about, working with a consultant over a year ago, I thought to myself, are we ready for this? Are we in a good place? Do we have all of the pieces and parts together? And that is a very important conversation for you to have as a staff person, and then, obviously with your board. But I want to stress the importance of not being intimidated by it, and not, letting that conversation kind of hold you back, because I think just being self-aware enough to know the pieces that you're missing is going to allow you to move forward with that consultant in an effective way. So I just want to stress the importance of not feeling, shame or guilt or intimidation that you're not already in a good place, because you might be better off than you think you are.
And I can attest to that for Kelsey. She was better off than she thought she was. A lot of that, honestly, was around the fact, Kelsey, that you were aware of what your weaknesses were as an organization, right? And I remember initially when I would ask you for something, and if you didn't have it, it was sort of this sheepish, oh no, I don't. And then after a while, you were just like, nope. And unapologetically, nope, we don't have it.
Yeah.
It's fantastic, right? Because it allowed me to say, okay, now I know I'm not going to have to dig out from guilt and everything else. But she's really straightforward. She doesn't have it. So thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So this slide, we kind of want to expand a little bit about the thought process behind thinking, do I need outside help? Should I enlist a consultant moving forward? So in this left-hand column is kind of, from my perspective, staff person perspective, as well as the board perspective, some of the questions you might be asking when you're approaching that relationship. So you might be thinking, do I even know where to start? Here's one of my favorite questions I ask myself very, very often. I don't know what I don't know. Do I need to enlist some help in order to figure out what I don't know? And then another important point that I think outside resources always help with is to lend credence to your work and authority to your message, to your board, and really to external constituents as well. I know Karen's going to talk some more about this in depth in further slides, but she conducted some interviews from the very get-go of this process with folks that were close to us, and then folks that were a little bit outside of our internal circle as well. And so I think just having a third party facilitate that, rather than a staff person or board member facilitate that, really lends that credence and that authority to your message and your purpose, and just gives, I think, a little more weight to what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I want to pick up on something you said, Kelsey, and that was, you want to lend authority to your message to the board. One of the things that I have found just happens over and over again is that I come in and say precisely what it is that the senior fundraiser would have said, or the in Kelsey's case, the executive director said. I say precisely the same thing, and all of a sudden the board or her colleagues are like, oh, okay, yeah, we'll do that, or oh, that makes sense. And there are times when I have an opportunity just to look at the client and just sort of smirk, like, we knew this was going to happen. But sometimes you just, a lot of times you feel like you don't have the authority in your own organization. And I will say it happens to everyone. I mean, it happened to me throughout my career. I would say something again and again and again, and some random, would come in and say it. And then all of a sudden it's the gospel. And I was like, am I here? Like, have I been saying that for the past 2 years or no? So,
Yeah.
So I mean, it is that outside, I guess, co-signing of what it is that you're saying as a staff person. From the consultant's perspective, what we need to know is, does each board member know what you expect specifically from them? And I want to hone in on that, specifically from them, because so often we recruit a board and we recruit this person because we want them Again, we have in our idea that they're going to, go talk to such and such a person and they have all these friends and money and resources and everything else. We have that in our head. But when we recruit them, we don't say, hey, I know you have all this time and money and resources and network, and we'd like you to do these specific things with that network and with your resources, these specific things. So I come in and I ask someone like Kelsey, does the board, each board member, know specifically what you want from them? And sometimes people say, well, absolutely, yes, we do. And I'll say, okay, what have you and that person in terms of what it is that they are going to deliver to you? And then the blank stare starts, right? Because there really hasn't been an explicit conversation. So those interviews that Kelsey alluded to, one of the things that I always do is have a conversation, a 30, 45 minute, 1 hour conversation with every single board member. And that's how I start out, because it is important to know what that board member's expectations are, what their understanding of expectations are. And then I share that information obviously with Kelsey. One of the things that's important is that your consultant is able to establish trust with those board members. So, I'm sorry to say, you can't just grab any sort of Tom, Dick, and Harry off the street that doesn't have the kind of gravitas and experience that maps onto what it is that your board members have. So you've got to have someone that's able to be trusted by your board members to take that information that that board member is sharing with them and to put it to good use. Mm-hmm. Another question I ask is, how do your board committees function? Often this is met with sort of a stare, right? So there might, correct me if I'm wrong, Kelsey, right? But there might be board committees in name, but it's important that you're able to really be clear about whether that board committee exists in reality, right? And then how you want them to function. Another thing I always ask is, may I see your resource development plan? And a resource development plan isn't just a listing of all the money we need and where we hope to get it from, but it also outlines what are the relationships we need to have, what are the actions that we need to take, who are the people that we need to help and do particular things. A resource development plan is your map forward. It's not a list of what kind of money you need, right? And it's a map forward in terms of every single source of money that there might be. So it's a map forward in terms of your civic relationships, your corporate relationships, your foundation, your public entities and things like that. What is the state of your donor records? Okay, Kelsey, you want to say anything about that?
Do I have to? No, I think when Karen asked me that question, I got very nervous because being relatively new to the organization, there was a lot of history that I was missing that wasn't recorded. Our records are shoddy at best, just to be completely transparent. And so, again, that goes back to my earlier point. I had heart palpitations when she asked that, because I thought, oh, wow, she's not going to work with us because we don't have good records. But the truth is, you piece together what you do have, you conduct interviews to kind of fill in those gaps. And then you do the best you can with what you have, because you can't go back and get that historical knowledge if you weren't there. And so really just knowing where you are and then doing better moving forward when you know better, I think that's all that you can hope for, really.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, Kelsey alluded to your history also, right? We were looking at, recently we were at one of the campuses and we were looking at a leaderboard of what people had given and realizing that there were gifts to that particular building that we didn't even have records of. And it was just sort of like, you know what, it is what it is. And that's okay. Again, it's that transparency that's really important in this relationship. Do is move forward. You piece together what you can. You have board member interviews. You also have interviews of people that are not board members, right? But that are former friends of the organization, and you just move on.
I love a good meme. So this is we'd like to discuss a little bit more about expectation versus reality when it comes to board members. And I just think this is such an appropriate meme because that is our expectation and our reality. I'm just kidding. Leo's not on my board, but we do like to have a lot of fun. So I think that just, encapsulates us really well. But just some points to highlight in terms of expectation versus reality for the board. Is the board actively working to raise funds from the community? Are they already doing that before you have a consultant, or is this going to be new territory for them to act as fundraisers? Are they already influencing others to give, or is that going to be something that's going to stretch them a little bit and you're going to have to coach them through that? Are they already giving an annual gift according to their means? And that's definitely a hot button topic, I think, in our world in terms of board engagement financially. And so our board did have a real honest conversation about that because complete transparency, we were not at 100% board giving. And so we were able to have that honest conversation. We actually negotiated an actual board contract that we all felt comfortable with, agreed upon it, and now everyone is on the same page. And I think that that's such an important tool when you come into an organization and there's board members who've already been recruited and maybe expectations were different under different leadership or they were not communicated at all. I think it's very important for everyone to get on the same page so that that expectation and that reality, the gap between the two really does close, and then everyone is happy. They feel engaged. They feel like they're contributing to the organization and that they're not just, don't have any direction at all. Okay, this is also a great meme, so appropriate. That's a photo of me in my office from yesterday. So I thought I'd just include that for you guys. So expectation versus reality for staff. So we're a very, very lean organization. I had one staff person for the last almost 2.5 years, and then this summer she transitioned out of my office. So it is now just the Kelsey show. And Karen is here too, so that is great. But I think that no matter the size of your team, whether it's very lean or a little more robust, I think you have to have an honest conversation with yourself, whether you're the development officer or you're in leadership, as to what the expectation is for the team, as well as what is the current reality. So I think that looks like identifying and pursuing leads, keeping records. We already alluded to this some, but assessing where your records currently stand and where there might be some gaps you need to fill in with verbal conversations with folks or just a little more digging, providing program information, providing support services. A huge component, as I'm sure you all are aware of our work, is the marketing, communications, public relations piece. And those pieces are so intertwined. And so I think if you don't have a dedicated marketing person on staff, then you have to make really close friends with the marketing staff you do have available to you, or you need to, maybe seek out outside counsel for that. But you really have to assess that from the front end because you might be missing some foundational pieces that are necessary to move forward. And then participation in donor engagement. What does that look like for your staff currently, and what do you aspire for that to look like once you get into, say, a campaign or a more robust fundraising cycle? So I'll just add a personal note here on like the marketing communications piece. When we got a little bit further into the conversation, we realized that was really an area or an opportunity really for us to improve, because we were missing some pieces of branding for the college and the foundation that I would consider just very foundational things. And so we kind of had to backtrack there a little bit and assess what we did have already. And then the things that we were missing, we had to jump on them real fast. So things like a case statement, Karen and I have been massaging that for months.
Too long, way too long.
It will be my first baby and I will deliver it in just a few months. I'm so excited. Things like, naming collateral, We do have a few buildings and classrooms rather named among our campuses, but we really didn't have any collateral for that. And so those are just some examples of the things that we were missing. But I think that if you're honest with yourself about that, you can do forward.
Yeah, I think it's really important to emphasize the fact that so much of your hesitance, so much of your sort of weariness about campaign and fundraising really may come from the internal, and it might really be just because people don't know what to do. Mm-hmm. And you have to just recognize that people aren't necessarily being difficult. It's that they don't know what to do, don't know what you don't know. Going back to transparency and really truth telling, it's, again, when you talk about your external people, your board members, are they really underperforming? Which is what I hear so often. Probably if I've got 20 clients, 19 of them are saying that the board isn't doing what it's supposed to do. But during those board interviews, what becomes very clear to me is that it's one of these things, right? The board members lack the information that they need. So they might not have talking points. Something as simple as talking points will prevent a board member from moving forward, from establishing relationships, from talking about your organization, because they are people that are used to being high performers in their jobs, perhaps, or in the community. And all of a sudden you want them to do they want to do a great job, right? You expect them to do, and they want to do a great job bringing in their network and bringing in, resources, but they don't even feel confident about what it is they have to say. So not having talking points, not having materials, not having written collateral, not knowing stories that they can tell to relate to people about what your organization is about. All of those things will stop the best board member in their tracks in terms of delivering. And then, not knowing what the impact of your organization is, all that is important. Do they lack the skills to deliver? So often people think that fundraising is simply about asking people for money. And what I always tell board members is, if you're not comfortable asking for money, please do not do it. I'm begging you not to ask for money, right? But what you can do is you can identify people. What you can do is you can cultivate people. What you can do is you can steward people. You can thank people for their gifts and let them know what the impact of those gifts are. But you need to make certain that your board is trained and they're comfortable doing that. Don't just expect them to know how to do it, because that lack of skill, their insecurity about that lack of skill, will prevent them from moving forward. Are they uncertain what you expect? Again, going back to, what's your board agreement? Is there a written board agreement? Have they committed to those things that they've written down that they will do? And simply, have they lost interest? Do they have other things to do? Did their life circumstances change? All of those things are really what you need to examine when you really talk about, my board members are underperforming. I want to take a second to refer to a handout that we gave, and that's in the app. And I'm sorry, I've forgotten the name of the app, but it's in the conference app, and that's the board. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Socio app.
Socio app. Thank you so much, Chelsea. So in that Socio app, there is an accountability grid. And so what I encourage you to do is that once you have your board members sign their sort of board member commitment form, what you should be doing as a staff person is, in your head, I've seen some people do it in their head or on a piece of paper. Other people I've seen pass this around during every board meeting. The accountability grid, some sort of accountability grid where each board member is checking off what it is that they have done since the last board meeting. And that helps keep people accountable. And it's funny, there was one board that I served on one time, and it was the first time that I had seen somebody actually pass around, during a board meeting. And I was horrified because I had not made an introduction to a foundation that I said I was going to. So this goes back to these high performing people. The anxiety that I felt over that piece of paper was so tremendous that you can bet for the next 4 years that I was on that board, I was like Johnny in front of the class with an apple for the teacher. Like I always did everything I was supposed to do because I was like, there will be a check mark by my name every single time that grid is passed around. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know if that's vanity or what that is, but I was like, yeah, you guys aren't going to catch me again. Like this. So board development, what you need to move forward in order to make certain that your board members are able to do the things that you want them to do, you've got to be clear about who you are as an organization, about what your vision is, about where you want to be. You've got to be able to set that vision and articulate, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, here's what we want our organization to look like. The things that we're going to do in order to get there. And then you've got to make certain that you've got people on board that are able to deliver that. So one of the things, another thing that's in the Socio app is there's a committee work plan. And so number one, you need to have committees. Number two, the work of those committees needs to reflect your vision and your strategic objectives of your organization. And that needs to be put into the individual committee work plan so that the individual committees know what it is that they're supposed to deliver. Okay. And that's one of those things, again, that if you don't know that you should have that and your board members don't know that you want them to do that, then there's just this wide abyss, right, Kelsey? Mm-hmm. It's articulating all that, right? Mm-hmm. And for Kelsey, it was sort of like, I don't have all this stuff together, right? And again, your consultant should be able to say, it's okay if you don't have it all together. I can help you get it together. That's an easy lift for me, right? I mean, it was sort of like, okay, Kelsey, here's some forms. Here's what you want each board committee to be about. And let's just get them meeting. I mean, was it difficult to get, a couple committees off the ground this year, Kelsey?
No, I mean, that's the thing is I really have like a rock star board. I could not ask for a better board, and they want to be engaged. They want to do everything they can for this organization, but structurally and organizationally, we just weren't organized in such a way that we were harnessing all of their strengths. And so, I have folks on this board that are fantastic fundraisers, and we weren't plugging them in that way. And so I think just getting a little more organized and professionalizing the way in which your board operates, through committee work, I think that that's such a huge component. And just, again, don't be intimidated if you don't have working committees. You might have them in name, but they don't actually operate. That's okay. Just be ready to, get in there and get them started. So this slide really, I think, focuses in on that concept of the interviews that we conducted at the very beginning of our time together with Karen. And so we asked ourselves from the very beginning, who needs to be involved in order for us to move forward successfully, especially in light of a capital campaign. And we had not conducted one in over 10 years. And so we were really reintroducing ourselves to a whole lot of people, re-engaging with people that were semi-engaged with us, but maybe not all the way engaged with us. So we involved our current board, past board members, key volunteers, key donors, community leaders, senior staff here at the college, other key players within the college. We're continuing to engage faculty as well. And there may be one set of constituents we haven't engaged with in the past. Our system, as well as individual colleges, operates on an advisory committee type of system for academic affairs. And so each program area has an advisory committee. And so those are folks from the community that volunteer their time to come help and give us input on curriculum and internships and things of that nature. And so for every program we have about 30 volunteers who are coming and meeting and serving on that committee. And so when Karen and I kind of looked at the landscape of what we had available, we thought, wow, there's 30 people per program that we have that is committed to this institution. They're not being paid. I think we feed them lunch and that's about it, but they're obviously invested in what we're doing. They're invested in our workforce. So why don't we engage these people and give them the opportunity to either invest with us financially or invest as an ambassador? So I think just doing kind of a SWOT analysis of what you have already is just so important from the beginning of that relationship with a consultant.
Absolutely. So, going back to your board, making certain that you have the right people around your boardroom table means making certain that those people map onto your strategy. So I've given you an example here of what a potential strategic goal might be, right? And that's your 3-year strategic goal might be brand recognition that appeals to volunteers, advocates, and funders. And your objectives under this might be that you want to provide some sort of engagement opportunity for 150 people every quarter. And you're going to do this through outreach to corporations and to civic groups, right? You're going to find people that you can get involved in your college in some way, right? So they might come to an event. They might volunteer on campus. Some of them might be speakers in the classroom, right? There are just a lot of different ways in which people might be involved in some way. But in order to build this brand recognition, you might know that that's one of your objectives that you need to accomplish. Another might be just to share the impact of your organization, of a particular program, with your major donors biannually. Okay, so if that's your objective, if that's your strategic goal, and these are some of your objectives, then you've got to think, who are the board members that will enable me to actually accomplish some of those things, right? So if I look at it strictly through a board development lens, I've got to make certain that I have people who have influence, that have a network, that have resources, that have expertise in a number of places. They need to have expertise in marketing and communications, perhaps in social and traditional media, because we're trying to share impact, right? We're trying to make certain that people know what it is we're about and who it is we're about. You want to make certain that if you're talking about 150 people, you want to make certain that you have people on your board that have connections to large numbers of people. So corporations that might have affinity groups. Affinity groups are simply groups of employees that have something in common. So you might have an affinity group in a large corporation, right? Where you might have an affinity group of people that are all from one sort of nationality. You might have an affinity group, a women's affinity group. You might have a parents of small children affinity group. You might have people that like backpacking and hiking. So a lot of corporations have different sort of social groups for their employees, really just to build camaraderie around among employees. You might want to make certain that you have board members that are members of civic groups, because you want to make certain that you're bringing people into your organization. You also are going to want to make certain that you have board members that are representative of your philanthropic sector. So they might be people that might have a family fund. You might be fortunate in order to get somebody on your board who's from a private foundation. You might have somebody that's on your board who's part of a corporate social responsibility group, or your corporate foundation or something like that, or just, employee giving. But you want to make certain that you have those people on your board in order to accomplish that strategic goal, which is brand recognition that appeals to volunteers, advocates, and funders. So often we think about, okay, we need to have an attorney on board, and we need to have an accountant on board, but you're not also thinking about that in light of what your needs of your organization are in order to become a better organization and to fulfill your mission out in the community. So it's not just sort of the tactical things that you as a board have to do, the administrative things that you have to do as a board. It's also about the things that you have to accomplish that are vision related, the things that are related to your mission. I did include in that app, in the Socio app, a board, not accountability grid, but just a board matrix. And that's sort of your typical, okay, making certain that you are able to check boxes in terms of what demographic people represent and what age, what age group they may represent, or what community they represent, or what skill set, what profession they represent. What you'll note in that matrix is in that upper left-hand side, one of those things says that those people have to have influence in a number of different sectors, right? Influence is the most important characteristic that a board member can have. Influence, okay? The next thing I'll say really quickly is about your leadership pipeline. So where are you in terms of sort of how do you make certain that you have enough people that are on board and that are ready to be on board? So take a moment and think about how large your pipeline is. One of the things that I always recommend is that you have a board pipeline, i.e. people that you're considering to be on your board, people that are going through the cultivation process, that pipeline is actually about 3 times the maximum size of your board. So if your board size is, in your bylaws, if your board size can be up to 20 people, I recommend a pipeline of 60 people. And that's because you should have at least that many people that you are cultivating, at least that many people that are becoming familiar with your organization, at least that many people who are donors, active donors to your organization, active volunteers who are actively participating on an advisory board like Kelsey mentioned, people who have been part of a board committee perhaps without even being on your board. But you want to make certain that you have people that are ready to step in and take the place of someone who's a current board member.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, Kelsey, that's you.
Yeah. So some opportunities for engagement. I think that is such an important topic to have a conversation around. If you can brainstorm it before you start working with a consultant, that's great. But if not, I'm certain that they would walk you through that. And that is really a group exercise. The way that we went about it here at West Georgia Tech was I tried to think without any outside resources of what I thought were good opportunities for engagement. But then I also, we reached out to the board to ask them, as well as our senior staff here at the college. And I asked them to be candid with me. So I said, please tell me how you think this college and this foundation are currently engaging the community. List those ways out. I want like the technical specifics of it. And then I also said, tell me opportunities you see in our community or internally within this college. Mark. And so we're not inviting the right people to the table. It's an opportunity that's essentially missed. And so I'll share with you guys one opportunity that was, I felt, and I think collectively we felt was being missed, was graduation. It's one of the most exciting opportunities we have at our college, as I'm sure it is for all of you as well. We have over 1,000 attendees. We pack out our biggest conference center at that and graduate several hundred students every semester, and we have 3 a year. So it's just a reoccurring event. It's really exciting, a lot of great energy, and we were kind of failing to engage the right people. So the way it looked in the past was that we would invite our board members to attend. We would have a reception, graduation. We always had a keynote speaker who was a prominent member of the community. They would come to that reception, they would speak, and then they would leave. And so it almost felt a little transactional. I think we were doing a good job with the reception, but we weren't carrying it all the way. And so we kind of teased that out some more, and we started thinking, okay, what are ways that we can capitalize on this exciting moment for the students, for alumni, for the community, for our board, for that organization that's being represented by a keynote speaker. And so we started to kind of conceptualize like a graduation celebration. And so we'd be, celebrating the students who are graduating. We could invite alumni back. We could engage that company or that organization that the keynote speaker was from, and invite members from that organization to come support their CEO or their vice president who was giving that keynote. And really, we could just use it more of a stewardship opportunity than we were. And so I think maybe give some thought to what opportunities you have that exist, because I'm sure you have a lot of great ones already on your campus and in your community, whether they're internal or external, and be thinking about ways that you could capitalize on them more, because I'm sure that there's some really great opportunities out there, but like us, you might not be using it to its fullest extent.
Kelsey, talk some about your series.
Yeah. So the year of COVID 2020, we're all accustomed to it now. So we typically have a huge fundraiser, and that's in person, obviously traditionally. And so we missed out on that this year, and we're looking forward to bringing it back next year. But when we made that decision not to have an in-person event, Karen and I started brainstorming ways that we could still engage with folks that would have been at that event, or maybe just heard about it, or folks that we're not even on their radar yet. We started thinking, what can we do, virtually during this time to still have a touch point with people that are important to us? And so we came up with this idea of a virtual panel series, and our first one is December 15th, so less than a month away. We'd love to have you guys join us again then, but we're going to hear from some different community and statewide leaders as to their experience during the pandemic or during a time of transition in general, and how they were able to kind of pivot through that and lead through that. And really, we hope to continue this series past COVID, into next year, and maybe one day we'll be in person for it as well, just to use it as an engagement tool for our community so that we can continue to establish ourselves as thought leaders in our community. We can be a part of the conversation, and folks will look to us for that expertise. And so just really gives us a good opportunity to brand ourselves and engage with the community at the same time.
Kelsey, I wanted to mention one of the things you mentioned, the advisory, the advisory boards that the different schools or the different disciplines have. And, one of the things that I think is really unique about those boards is that you have people from the community that sit on those boards. And one of the things that I saw right from the beginning as a consultant, and, it really is unfortunate that this was the year of COVID, but there is this automatic opportunity with, I don't even know how many advisory boards you have, at least 6 or 7, right? But you have, let's say 42 additional people that are representing different companies and different communities and different disciplines, different areas of expertise, that if you were to expand into their network and to ask them to engage in some way, I mean, West Georgia Tech has such an amazing opportunity to build a really wide base of donors, because you do have those touch points, you do have those advisory boards. And those people are, that are sitting on those advisory boards represent hundreds of people out in the community also. So often we have things in our organization and we have people that are involved, and we're looking at them from one angle only, right? At West Georgia Tech, we were just thinking of them as, oh, they're just there to advise the nursing program, right? Not realizing that, oh, there are, 8 people that represent the largest hospital system in, in Western Georgia, and we probably need to leverage those relationships, to get at the hospital foundation, perhaps.
All right. So the most important thing, all that work that you're putting into board development, community engagement, resource development, how do you make those relationships stick? So important. I think it's something that has to be ever present, and really from the beginning of a campaign or just any work with your board, you have to be thinking about this from the start. And so I think just going back to those interviews that Karen conducted in the very beginning, those focus groups, before we kicked off this process, I think that was so important because it was the first time in a long time, I think, some members of our community had felt heard and valued. And Karen doesn't know this, so I'll surprise her, but one of those folks that she interviewed that's close to us reached out to me recently and said, I want to help you with that campaign. Here are some folks that you need to start talking to now. And the organization that she is with is a big player in our community. And she said, and we want to be involved, in the construction of your new campus. And so I think had we not, engaged her from the front end and kind of established that rapport and that credibility with her, she wouldn't have reached out to us and said, hey, keep me involved. I want to be in the loop. I want to be a part of this. And so I just can't stress enough how important it is from the beginning, but to keep them engaged.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I will say one other thing. Number one, great to hear that somebody said, hey, we involved. Let's start out with that, Kelsey. The thing about those board interviews is during those interviews, I asked board members, who in your personal network and who in your professional network do you think should be involved in this? And I compiled a list of people. And there are, I would say easily 100 people on that list coming from those interviews with those board members. That's 100 people that board members are willing to reach out to and have conversations with, okay? Mm-hmm. And so those, you didn't have those names beforehand, Kelsey, right? Mm-hmm. You didn't know how these people, how your board members were willing to help and willing to be part of the solution. And that's why, sitting down with board members is so critically important. So even though I may come in and do it, as at the beginning of my engagement with an organization, it's important that from that time forward, a board member makes, and it's usually, your chair of your board development committee or your chair of your resource development committee, or governance committee, one of those committees, that chair every year, or your board every year needs to have a one-on-one with every single board member and make certain that that board member is feeling valued, that we are leveraging what that board member can do, and that we're holding that board member accountable. That check-in that happens outside of the day, outside of the regular sort of board meeting is critically important because you want your board to be cohesive and you want them to feel responsible to each other.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm going to chime in really quick. We have 5 minutes left in the session. So I don't know if you want to continue with the your presentation. I see you have a slide, maybe a couple more left, or if y'all wanted to allow for some questions. If anyone in the group has any questions, they could speak up, or mm-hmm. If nobody has any questions, then y'all can just continue going and take full advantage of your remaining 5 minutes.
I think this is our last slide, so we can run through it real quick and then, okay, perfect. So with this last slide, we just kind of wanted to close that circle and kind of update you on where we are now, several months into this process of working together. So in full transparency, we're going through a leadership change at our institution. My president is retiring at the end of this year. I'm still mad at him about that, but really happy for him. So it's great. And then obviously it's COVID time. So there's been economic disruption. We can't engage with folks, on a personal level as much as we're accustomed to. So it's been a very strange year, to say the least. I'm sure I don't have to remind anyone of that. But we have tried our best to remain, stable and focused on the task at hand, which is this capital campaign, working with Karen to better engage our board. And so we continue to self-evaluate. We continue to engage the board. We are definitely working our committees a lot harder than we ever have been. We're more organized in that way. We are striving to move towards more authentic relationships versus transactional ones. And we continue to look for new ways to engage, like the panel series I spoke about. We continue to beef up our marketing, especially in light of this campaign, and then work to break down silos. So really engage faculty in particular, and they haven't been engaged maybe as much in the past. So Karen, I don't know if you wanted to add anything from your perspective as well.
No, I'm curious about Chelsea, do we have questions at all?
Actually, the first one just popped up in the chat. Deborah has asked, how do you help an organization understand the ROI, your return of investment of engaging a consultant?
Well, I think, well, you know, actually, Kelsey, do you want to answer that? I've got 15. How did you help them understand it?
Just begging a lot. No, I'm just kidding. I think that they really understood when I made the plea to them for some outside resources that we are a lean organization. We were strapped pretty thin in manpower, and so I communicated to them, I can't continue to do my day job and then also run a capital campaign to the level that you all deserve and that this community deserves. So we do have the resources to engage a consultant at this time. Why don't we interview several folks and kind of see who's the best fit for us and what we're trying to accomplish? And Karen was definitely that person for us. So I think, and to be honest with you, it really was not a difficult conversation to have, because they knew that it was paramount for us to invest money in order to be invested in.
Yeah. It's the investment of money that's important, because anyone will tell you, anytime you hire a fundraiser, you actually are investing in someone who's going to the return on them is going to be much more than their salary, right? I mean, if you're investing, $100,000, in benefits and salary in a fundraiser, they're going to raise more than $100,000. And it's the same thing with a consultant, regardless of how much you pay them. It's important for you to have that honest conversation and look and say, you know what, we're not getting what we should be getting out of our board members. Our board giving for 20 board members is under $20,000, yet we grabbed these board members because we knew they had money. Well, $1,000 each is chump change for somebody that's a CEO of an organization, right? So being really honest, quite frankly, about what money you're getting in, what relationships you're leveraging, how you're moving forward as an organization is the best way to talk about ROI, right? Because if you're not getting upwards of $50,000 from your board, you really need to be asking yourself questions about why you have them as board members, and perhaps you need help recruiting the right board, if nothing else.
Those were good answers. And Deborah agrees in the chat. I'm not directly involved in fundraising. While I am in marketing communications, we do play a role here and there, but I found this presentation very helpful. I learned a couple things, and I text my supervisor real quick, who is directly involved in fundraising. I was like, you need to hop on real quick. So he was able to join us. I see we have probably about 5 or 6 guests who were not, guests and participants in the presentation. So if they have any questions, y'all unmute yourself or pop them in the chat.
Karen, will you throw our contact information slide up as well in case they want to reach out? Perfect.
And I will say that this presentation is being recorded, and that they can be sent out to, maybe you have a coworker or a colleague that you would like to share this with, or you wanted to go back and reference something. These are recorded, so we'll be able to provide those at the end of the conference. That was another one of my questions, is your contact information. So this is perfect.
Awesome.
Certainly.
And I know y'all mentioned, I think there was 4 documents that are in the socio. There's a desktop version and an app that went along with your presentation.
Actually, I think it's 3 actually, Chelsea.
Okay.
An accountability grid, board accountability grid, a committee work plan, just a sample committee work plan, and a board matrix that has the matrix, and then also some tips and tricks and hints for recruitment of board members.
You know what? That first one is probably your presentation. There is 4 documents.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Great.
It's there. So I did have it the whole time. I'm sorry.
No worries.
Thank you all so much for being here today. And thank you, Chelsea, for your help.
Y'all are very welcome. Thank you for presenting. It was wonderful. And everybody else that's here, don't forget to go hop on those virtual sponsor sessions and get entered your name to win a door prize.
Oh,
Thank you.
All righty.
bye.
Bye.